The phrase in the translation, "the strongest provinces of the empire," refers to the 7 nations, provinces, of revived Rome, which constitute the strong or iron part of the revived empire, as opposed to the 3 remaining kingdoms of clay. Not only does the Hebrew here not give any definite indication that Antichrist's entrance into these provinces is at all opposed, but the description of the means by which he enters, through the same seductive methods, strongly suggests that his taking of possession of these 7 nations will be along the lines of his seizure of power in Babylon. In fact, the Hebrew phraseology employed here in Daniel 11:24 is effectively identical to that used of Antichrist's coup d'état described in Daniel 11:21, that is, the carl of bow, plus the prepositional phrase beshalva, are used in both instances to mean gain control through seductive methods. Rather than a complicated series of military maneuvers, therefore, it is apparent that Antichrist's takeover of Europe and Israel will be accomplished through largely political means. The picture provided by Daniel 11:24 also agrees with what we know of the timing of tribulational events. A complicated series of military campaigns designed to conquer all of Europe and Israel would almost certainly take a considerable amount of time to prepare and complete, and such a prolonged period of warfare within Europe is not consistent with what Scripture has to say about the tribulation's first half, specifically the 2 campaigns against the south, which follow the beast's seizure of the 7 kingdoms. The beast's initial seizure of Babylon and preparation for the subsequent securing of the first 7 nations of revived Rome would seem to require at a very minimum at least 6 months apiece to complete. Given that fully 2 major campaigns by Antichrist's newly won empire of the north against the Southern Alliance are also prophesied to occur during the first half of the tribulation, and that such campaigns have historically taken place during the winter months with most of the preceding summer months needed to organize and prepare, we are left with a scant 6-month period for Antichrist's capture and consolidation of the 7 kingdoms. These time constraints alone, therefore, argue for this seizure to be more along the lines of another coup d'état, and this time a multifaceted one at that. We have already discussed the scenario by which Antichrist will use deceptive means to gain power in his native Babylon. To accomplish a similar feat in 7 other different nations simultaneously will unquestionably require an extraordinary degree of cooperation, one which is unprecedented, as observed in the previous annals of human history. Apart from cooperation at the top, it is highly questionable whether such a feat would be possible, even were we to assume a large 5th column of sympathetic supporters in each of these 7 nations and their corresponding spheres of influence. Indeed, the only scenario which seems prima facie feasible is the one which Daniel 11:24 suggests, the same scenario to which the absence of detail in Revelation also points, assuming as it does Antichrist's control over revived Rome from the beginning, namely, that the 7 kings are in the beast's camp from the very start. This agrees with the information we have already gleaned earlier in the book of Daniel. And as to the 10 horns, from that kingdom, that is Rome, the 4th beast, 10 kings will arise, and another one, that is Antichrist, will arise after them. And he will be different from the former ones, and he will cast down 3 kingdoms. Daniel 7:24. In emphasizing the military defeat of 3 kingdoms, this verse necessarily suggests no such overt military conquest in the case of the preceding 7. But the passage quoted also provides an important detail, which helps to explain Antichrist's relationship to the 7, for it states that he will arise after them. What this means is that the rise of these 7 extraordinary dictators to power in their own countries and their subsequent establishment of hegemonies over their weaker neighboring nations will predate Antichrist's takeover of Babylon. In other words, the 7 nations of revived Rome will effectively be waiting for the beast to pluck, like a series of ripe apples, as soon as he has secured his own political position. Even the projecting of the development of Antichrist's religious political movement backward several years prior to the tribulation, so as to be able to posit the development of a number of mirror movements in the 7 nations and the subsequent seizure of power by their leaders, fails to fully explain how, or perhaps more to the point, why these 7 kings are standing ready to hand over their power and authority to the beast. The fact that this flies in the face of all prior known historical behavior cannot be overemphasized. Therefore, it must be the case that these 7 kings have more in common with the beast than may meet the eye, and that their involvement with the devil and his minions is far closer and far more explicit than anything we have seen in the past, even in the case of the world's most evil tyrants and dictators. Not even an active embracing of Satanism is sufficient to fully explain this somewhat self-sacrificing acquiescence to the will of the devil's son. Therefore, the best explanation for this extraordinary chain of events is that, like Antichrist, they too are Nephilim, not offspring of the devil himself, as is Antichrist, but engendered nevertheless by some of his most trusted lieutenants. Only in this way can we explain, on the one hand, the coincidence of 7 discrete meteoric rises to power on the part of 7 distinct individuals within the territory of historical Rome, and on the other hand, their unanimous willingness to cede their exceptional power to another, absent overwhelming duress. It can only be that these 7 share in company with the beast a wickedly unique origin and an innate commitment to carrying out the will and plans of the evil one. This interpretation helps to explain the close connection found in Scripture between the beast and these 7. For example, 1. In Revelation 13:2, the beast is said to have a mouth as of lions, the plural being a reference to the 7 kings who are clearly similar to him. 2. The 7 kings are described at Revelation 13:3 as 7 identical heads, though one head has a fatal wound, a picture which for our purposes here also shows the similarities between Antichrist and these kings, who is both an 8th and one of the 7, that is, depending upon whether he is being viewed as a discrete emperor or the personification of revived Rome. Revelation 17:11. 3. The fact that, as we saw previously, the name of blasphemy which identifies the beast as a pseudo-Christ is inscribed collectively on each of the 7 heads. Revelation 13:1. 4. The identification of Antichrist as a horn among these horns. Daniel 7:24, who starts out smaller. Daniel 7:8, and becomes larger than the others. Daniel 7:20. And finally 5. The fact that all 7 heads and all 10 horns are an intrinsic part of the same beast in all of the instances in Daniel and Revelation where this figure is used. Therefore, whatever the visible coordination between these leaders and between the beast and these 7 as a group, and whatever visible similarities in the political, social, and religious phenomena they represent and exploit, the truth will be that there is a deeper, more sinister reason for their unprecedented cooperation, and that all of the areas of apparently coincident self-interest on the surface will in reality be driven by a darker unanimity of purpose. It is for this reason above all that the seizure of the 7 kingdoms will resemble a victory parade rather than a military campaign. In terms of recent history, Nazi Germany's Anschluss of Austria may provide a rough parallel.